authentication, to prove that you are who you say you are, you have to prove that you know something, and you have to do all this in public. So, does that make sense? Think of your password. When you log onto a website, you very often give it a password. That password is your proof that you know something, namely your password. How do we make it possible? I mean, how is it that you can do that securely? I mean, if I said to you, I don't believe that you're my real audience, give me your password to prove that we should let you into the room, I would know your password. So we have to have mechanisms that convey passwords securely. Digital signature, we need to be able to sign checks, except the checks are electronic and the signatures are electronic, and no one's ever seen your signature before. And the answer is public key cryptography. So, let me just sort of summarize that. Traditional cryptography is typically it's about diplomatic and military users, big governments, big corporations. It's typically about physical, written or radio or speech. It's typically about confidentiality, and probably second on the list is timeliness. In other words, not messages being capable of being sent and read very, very quickly because they might be urgent. Attack now. And by now, I mean now. Modern cryptography is much more about financial transactions or business or personal business, personal communication. Perhaps not so earth-shatteringly important, but it is to you. It's typically digital, i.e. internet, and we're also concerned with authentication, in other words, proving that you are who you say you are, non-repudiation, business transactions, and integrity of messages. So, modern cryptography poses a lot of challenges. So what modern cryptography means is using codes and ciphers to achieve these goals. So here's an example of a public key encryption system. And probably many people have seen it. It's most commonly known in the outside world as the RSA encryption scheme. We tend to call it the COTS RSA scheme because it was actually invented first by Clifford Cotts, my predecessor, in the early 1970s at GCHQ, but he wasn't able to publish it, and it was rediscovered later by three Americans called Rivest, Shamir, and Edelman, who are the RS and A of the title, but we think credit is where credit is due. And this is a completely different sort of system. There are two keys. There's a public key, which everyone knows, and there's a secret key, which only the owner knows. There's only one person who knows that secret. So here's an example of how we can achieve that. Here is a piece of public information. And I'm willing to tell you for free that this large number is a product of two other numbers. There are two other numbers which, if you multiply them together, will make you that number. Everyone got there? It's the product of those two numbers. Now, hello. Encryption is on, the call is secure. This is an interesting example of a failure in protocol. You see, we've got an encrypted connection to someone else. And I have no idea what I do about Anyway, you briefly saw. Okay, okay, you can see it. There it is. The point is that I think that actually illustrates very neatly the point about protocols, systems, and human error.
enter the number and call.
You've gone back.
I have no idea what's going on. I could press random buttons, but anyway, you can just see under there. The point is that I didn't think of that first number at random and then try and find out what these two numbers were. I thought of these two numbers first and then multiplied them together. So these numbers are my secret. And I can tell you what that product number is, and it will be, for all practical purposes, impossible for you to tell what my secret is. So I have something that you don't. And the Cox RSA system is about utilising that asymmetry, that difference between you and me. And so, for example, in modular arithmetic, the exponentiation function, you can think of this as being cubing. Going from a number to a number times itself in modular arithmetic is easy to do. Cubing a number is very easy, it's just two multiplications. But undoing that cubing and looking at this number and saying, what did I cube to get that number, is hard unless you know the secret. But I can, so I can do that, and I can use that asymmetry as the basis of a cryptographic system. But also, I can use it to prove that I know those two numbers without telling you what they are. Something which I might have to do in a minute. Because, you see, the knowledge of that secret makes it possible for me to do something that no one else can do. So you can challenge me with, you can just say, okay, you claim to know that secret. Okay, solve this little challenge for me. And if I can keep on doing that, you believe that actually I know that secret. It's as if I've given you all padlocks and I claim to have the key, but I'm not going to show you the key. I just say I've got it in my pocket. And you say, I don't believe you've got that key. Well, what I do is I say, give me the lock that padlock, and I'll just go away. And here you have the padlock unlocked. If I can do that over and over again, I've probably got the key to all those padlocks. But you never get to see it. So that I can prove that I know something without ever telling you what it is, or giving you any useful information that would help you to, that would make it possible for you to impersonate me later on. So that is actually exactly what is happening when your browser goes green. We are establishing a Cox RSA cryptographic secure channel to Amazon. They're doing one in the other direction. But they have to know what these numbers are. So these numbers are they're the public keys which make the whole thing work. And that means we have to have a way of, so I've said that finding the two numbers which multiply together is hard. Well, it's hard in the following sense. We know, or think we know, how hard it is. If you've got a number of size n, it takes e to the 1.93 cube root of log n, 2/3 power of log n operations to find the two factors of n. If you think of n as being, as it was, a 1,000-digit number, this is an awfully large number of operations. This is probably not the best we can do. It's the best we know how to do. And the point is that what is protecting the Cox RSA system is not some physical difficulty of, getting into safes or, scaling barbed wire fences. It's the difficulty of doing a problem which we think is hard to do only because lots of very clever people have tried for a long time to solve this problem, and this is the best they've come up with. And we know how hard it is. We believe we know how hard it is. But it's only a belief. And I might get into the office tomorrow and find that some bright young graduate student at the University of Bristol, say, has come up with something that's even better than this, and we will have to think very hard. But if everyone's got one of these big numbers, these public keys, we have to, which they're going to use to authenticate or secure channels, they have to know what other people's key public information is. You think of this large number, now what do you must be a thing called an infrastructure that associates you as a person with some big number. And yes, so if I'm using this to authenticate a user, how do I actually attach a number to a person? You've never, you see, you don't know who you're talking to, you don't know what their number is. Well, it's like a phone number, you look it up in the phone book. Where is the reliable phone book that you look people's numbers up in? When you've got your browser? Well, we'll unpick that for a moment and talk about identity. So there are sort of several parts of this. There's registration, and that's talking about relate binding, as we call it, a natural identity, a physical person, to some number, some digital identity. And you do this when you take out a passport, or a driving license, or an identity card, of some description. So when we have decided not to bring in a compulsory universal national identity card in this country. It was mooted a few years ago. My mother said, well, it's all right, I've got my old one from the war. During the war, the political balance said, yes, people will have to have identity cards. After the war, people said, actually, that's the sort of thing we're all fighting to avoid. But nonetheless, there is a national identity card for non-citizens. What does your identity consist of? Well, your passport and driving license have got photographs. There might be something to do with biometrics, with a fingerprint or an eye retina scan. And there might be something to do with some secret. You might choose a PIN number or a password to associate as something that you can use as a sort of shortcut to your own personal identity. And of course, you've probably got so many PIN numbers and passwords that you don't know what to do with them now. Now, you've got all these digital identities. There's a number on your passport, there's a different number on your driving license, you've got all these PIN numbers and bank account numbers. You want to bind those together and say, the person with this passport is the person with this driving license, is the person with this bank account, is the person with this credit card, etc. Is the person with this email address, is the person with this public key, and his computer has this IP address, and so on. So we need an elaborate infrastructure to bind all these things together, and that exists. It's called certification, and it's about digitally signing things. So I didn't actually go into how you digitally sign things, but public key cryptography solves the digital signature problem. So what happens is, Alice and Bob want to establish to their mutual satisfaction that they are who they say they are. So Alice has her identity certified by an authority who says, okay, so that authority says, oh, I've seen Alice, and I've seen her public key, and she's paid me some money, and here is a signed certificate to that effect. Okay, so how do I know that that authority's signature is good? Well, now I go to another authority, and they say, oh, well, I've seen this chap, and I've seen him, and he's paid me a bit more money, and he's a frightfully good chap, so you should trust his signature. And now someone's seen this chap, and said they're frightfully good, and so there's another person, and he's seen this chap who's seen Bob. So all of this adds up to a chain of trust. And these are enormously difficult to manipulate, to work with. There's a public standard called X509, which says how you do this. And the reason it's so difficult is that we're dealing with sort of the three big things: identity,